Most men walk through life believing they understand women. They think they do. They think if they're attentive, funny, and generous enough, they'll naturally attract and keep the woman they desire. But here's the brutal truth. 97% of men get this completely wrong. And it's not because they aren't trying, it's because they've been taught the wrong rules. The rules that society, friends, and pop psychology give them. The rules that promise success but deliver confusion, frustration, and heartbreak. You see, men spend years trying to figure women out by analyzing what they say. They listen to words, advice, and complaints, and they respond with strategy, logic, and effort. But here's the problem. Women don't operate on logic. They operate on feelings, energy, and emotional alignment. And the moment you focus on the words without understanding the emotional currents underneath, you're already missing the game. Think about this. She tells you she wants you to be romantic or pay attention more, but the truth is, that's just a symptom. The real issue is her emotional experience around you, how she feels when she's with you, whether she senses your confidence, your presence, your self-possession, or whether she feels a subtle tension, insecurity, or hesitation. She's not analyzing the words you say, she's feeling the energy you project. Most men respond by overcompensating. They buy gifts, they text constantly, they bend over backward to prove their worth. And what happens? Instead of creating connection, they inadvertently communicate anxiety and neediness. Because when you're constantly performing to meet her expectations, you're sending one message loud and clear. I am unsure of myself. I need you to validate me. And that, subconsciously, is a huge turnoff. Here's what 97% of men never realize. Women want a man who can hold his own energy, who doesn't bend with every whim, who isn't swayed by every mood or test. They want a man whose presence creates a feeling of certainty, not because he's rigid or controlling, but because he's grounded, aligned, and unwavering in who he is. That energy is magnetic. It communicates value, stability, and strength in a way words never can. Most men are so focused on tactics that they miss the invisible language that women respond to instinctively: presence, confidence, emotional sovereignty. These are not optional, they are foundational. Without them, no amount of strategy, advice, or effort will ever create lasting attraction, because she's wired to feel alignment, or its absence. And if she senses imbalance, inconsistency, or neediness, her attraction quietly fades. Let me be clear, this is not about being perfect. It's not about being rich, muscular, or endlessly charming. Those things might catch attention, but they cannot sustain deep connection. What sustains connection is your ability to show up fully as yourself, unafraid, unwavering, emotionally grounded, and confident in your value. That's what women respond to. That's what creates desire. That's what commands respect. Most men ignore this because it's invisible. It doesn't come in a neat package. There's no book, no formula, no pickup trick that teaches it effectively. You can read all the relationship advice in the world and still fail if you haven't mastered your own energy, presence, and boundaries. Because attraction isn't external, it's internal, projected, and felt. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you've been relying on charm, humor, or material gestures to win her, you're already losing. Not because you're doing anything wrong in the conventional sense, but because you've been neglecting the core element she subconsciously evaluates every day: your alignment, your center, your non-negotiables, and the weight of your presence. And that's why most men fail. They're looking outward instead of inward. They're trying to change her perception without first changing themselves. They tolerate disrespect, they overcompensate for insecurity, they adjust their identity to fit the relationship. And every time they do, the invisible signal women read shifts. Respect declines. Attraction wanes. Connection weakens. Most men never realize that women are drawn to a certain kind of energy, a combination of confidence, emotional stability, and self-possession that can't be faked. She doesn't need words. She doesn't need proof. She feels it the moment she's around you. And if it's missing, no strategy can replace it. No line, no date, no gesture can recreate the pull that exists naturally when a man is fully himself. And here's the paradox. The more you try to control, perform, or explain yourself to gain her approval, the more you destroy that energy. You may think you're increasing attraction, but in reality, you're signaling doubt. You're signaling uncertainty. You're signaling that your presence isn't enough without constant validation. And women feel that, deeply, instinctively, even if they can't articulate it. So, the first step to understanding what women actually want is to stop focusing on what they say and start examining what you project. Your energy, your confidence, your emotional consistency, your boundaries, these are what she responds to first. Everything else follows. Your words, your actions, your gestures, those are secondary. They're amplified by the energy behind them. Most men never grasp this because it's counterintuitive. Society teaches us that success with women comes from doing more, trying harder, and pleasing them. But real attraction comes from being more, being aligned, being grounded, being magnetic without effort, being a man whose presence naturally inspires desire and respect. This isn't about manipulation. It's not a game. It's a truth that's been ignored for decades. When you embody this energy, you no longer need to chase. You no longer need to explain yourself. You no longer need to tolerate behaviors that erode your self-respect. Attraction becomes effortless, connection becomes deep, and respect becomes automatic. Ask yourself this: are you operating from that level of self-possession, presence, and confidence? Or are you still trying to figure her out through strategies, tips, and techniques, hoping that effort alone will win her heart? The answer will reveal why most of your relationships feel frustrating, confusing, or short-lived. Here's what 97% of men never understand. Women aren't drawn to what you do. They're drawn to who you are when you do it. They don't care about the lines you've memorized, the dates you've planned, or the effort you've poured into trying to impress them. They care about the energy you carry, the subtle mix of confidence, clarity, and emotional steadiness that signals, without words, that you are grounded in yourself. Most men overlook this because they focus on outcomes. They ask themselves, how do I get her to like me? Or, what can I do to make her stay? They strategize, analyze, and overthink. But attraction doesn't work that way. Attraction isn't earned, it's recognized. And what she recognizes first isn't your effort. It's your presence, your alignment, and your internal energy. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever been around a man who was calm, steady, and self-assured, even in stressful situations? Not arrogant, not distant, but entirely confident in who he is. There's an invisible pull in that kind of energy. You feel it, you respect it, and without realizing why, you want to be around it. That same principle applies to women. They respond instinctively to energy, not strategy. Contrast that with a man who is inconsistent, uncertain, or emotionally reactive. Even if he says all the right things, even if he's attentive and charming, the subtle signals he projects undermine attraction. Women feel tension, hesitation, or instability, and over time, that erodes connection. It's silent, it's gradual, but it's fatal for long-term desire. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Women want emotional leadership more than they want charm or material gestures. Emotional leadership isn't controlling them or dominating the relationship. It's about being anchored in yourself, regulating your own emotions, and creating stability in a world full of uncertainty. That kind of energy communicates strength, reliability, and value in a way words never can. Most men misunderstand this entirely. They think romance is about doing more, planning elaborate dates, sending gifts, constantly checking in, or always agreeing. But when actions are driven by anxiety or the need for validation, they fail to inspire attraction. Women sense the imbalance. They feel the energy behind the actions, not the superficial acts themselves. The reality is, women are wired to respond to alignment and consistency, not effort alone. When a man's words, actions, and energy match, she experiences a sense of certainty, safety, and desire. When they don't, even subtly, attraction begins to fade. And this is why so many relationships stall, because men are trying to impress rather than embody themselves fully. This is also why boundaries are essential. Women may test them, subtly, sometimes unconsciously, but maintaining your boundaries signals alignment and self-respect. It's not about rigidity or stubbornness. It's about standing firmly in your energy, communicating clearly what you will and won't accept, and acting consistently. That presence, over time, builds respect, desire, and emotional connection that lasts. Now let's get deeper. Emotional consistency isn't about suppressing feelings or avoiding conflict. It's about expressing yourself without losing your center. It's about navigating disagreement, uncertainty, or her moods without letting them dictate your internal state. That's what most men fail at. They react emotionally, overcompensate, or chase approval, and every time they do, attraction diminishes. The irony is that this doesn't make relationships harder, it makes them easier, if you understand it. Because when you embody grounded presence, you stop trying to control outcomes, you stop over-explaining, you stop tolerating what doesn't serve you, attraction flows naturally, respect is earned automatically, and emotional connection deepens because you're no longer sending mixed signals. Here's the core lesson that 97% of men miss. Women don't fall for effort, they fall for energy. They don't chase lines, they chase alignment. They don't invest in anxiety-driven gestures. They invest in certainty, presence, and emotional mastery. That is the invisible psychology behind attraction that most men will never see, no matter how many books, videos, or tricks they consume. So, the challenge is clear. Shift the focus inward. Stop asking how to make her like you. Start asking how to become the man whose energy naturally inspires attraction. Stop tolerating what diminishes your presence. Stop seeking validation externally. Master your emotional state, strengthen your boundaries, and live in alignment with who you truly are. When you do this, you stop chasing, you stop performing, you stop giving energy that isn't yours to give. And the result? Women feel magnetic attraction. They feel respect. They feel desire. And they respond to it instinctively, not consciously. Here's the part that almost no man ever admits to himself. Most of what you think you're doing to attract her is actually repelling her. It's subtle, it's quiet, it's invisible, and it's happening right now without you even realizing it. The problem isn't what you say. The problem isn't what you do. The problem is the energy behind your actions. The unspoken signal you send when you're unsure of yourself, when you overcompensate, when you try too hard to prove your worth. Women are wired to detect this instantly. It's subconscious, primal, unavoidable. She may smile, laugh, even compliment you, but somewhere deep down, her attraction wanes. That pull, that spark that made her feel alive around you initially, it dims slowly, quietly, and almost imperceptibly. And no amount of texting, gift-giving, or over-explaining can restore it. Because attraction isn't a transaction, it's a recognition. She recognizes a man who is grounded, confident, and emotionally sovereign, and she senses it immediately. Most men never notice this because they confuse attention with attraction. They think if she responds to their texts, laughs at their jokes, or enjoys their company, she's fully invested. But attention is easy to get. It's fleeting. Attraction is something she feels on a deeper level, often before words are even exchanged. And it's built on consistency of energy, not charm or effort. Let's break this down. Women crave certainty more than novelty. They crave emotional stability more than drama. They crave alignment more than performance. That doesn't mean they want boring. That doesn't mean they want a man who is cold or distant. It means they want a man who can navigate life with clarity, who can maintain his center when emotions rise, who can be himself without fear or constant need for validation. That is magnetic. That is irresistible. Here's why most men fail. They tolerate behaviors in women that erode their own energy. They overcompensate for insecurity, bend over backward to keep her happy, and chase validation in subtle ways they don't even notice. Every time you tolerate misalignment, you weaken your presence. Every time you sacrifice your clarity to appease her, you signal neediness, and attraction diminishes. And yet, most men think they're doing it right by being attentive, caring, and committed. The truth? They're doing it wrong, and they don't even see it. This is where psychology is brutally clear. Women respond to emotional signals, not words or gestures. A man who is consistent, grounded, and self-assured projects energy that makes her feel safe, wanted, and drawn in. A man who is uncertain, reactive, or seeking approval projects tension that makes her feel unsettled, distant, or less connected. And the more subtle the tension, the more dangerous it is because it erodes attraction invisibly, without confrontation, without fights, without clear explanation. Most men never confront this because it's uncomfortable to look inward. It forces you to see where you overreact, overcompensate, or give away your power. It forces you to recognize that attraction isn't about winning or performing. It's about being. It's about presence, alignment, and emotional sovereignty. And that's a truth most men would rather ignore because it requires courage, discipline, and self-awareness. When you finally understand this, everything changes. You stop trying to impress, you stop seeking approval, you stop tolerating what doesn't serve you. Your energy shifts naturally, and with it, her perception of you shifts as well. Attraction deepens, respect grows, emotional connection strengthens, and all of this happens not because of what you do, but because of who you are being. Here's the next step most men overlook: boundaries. Women aren't drawn to men who say yes to everything. They're drawn to men who know their limits, who communicate clearly, and who enforce those limits without apology. Boundaries aren't just about protection, they're about value. They signal self-respect, clarity, and alignment. And women recognize that instantly. The man who can say no without fear, who can uphold his standards calmly and confidently, is the man whose presence is magnetic. Now, let's get uncomfortable again. Emotional presence isn't just about not chasing her or maintaining boundaries. It's also about confronting your own patterns of neediness, overthinking, and tolerance of misalignment. Most men allow small compromises in behavior, self-respect, and energy for the sake of short-term comfort or the illusion of connection. But each compromise diminishes attraction, subtly and cumulatively. That's why some relationships fade quietly, even when everything seems fine on the surface. The invisible truth: attraction isn't built by giving more, it's built by being more. Being grounded, being aligned, being emotionally sovereign, being the man whose presence alone inspires desire, safety, and respect. That's why women fall for confidence, not effort. They fall for clarity, not charm. They fall for a man who embodies himself fully, not a man who bends to meet every expectation. Here's the challenge: do you have the courage to examine yourself? To notice where your energy falters, where you overcompensate, where you tolerate what undermines your presence? Most men don't. Most men keep doing what feels safe, even when it erodes attraction. But the men who do notice and who act transform their relationships entirely. Because the moment you stop performing, stop chasing, stop tolerating, and start embodying your own energy fully, everything changes. Women feel it. Attraction deepens, respect grows, connection strengthens, and all of it happens naturally because you are no longer trying to be what you're not, and she responds instinctively to the man who is fully himself. Here's the final truth almost every man will never admit. Women don't just want a man who tries hard or does everything right. They want a man whose presence itself commands attention, trust, and desire. A man who is grounded, self-assured, and unwavering in his values. A man who doesn't bend, break, or overcompensate to please them, but who chooses to show up fully, aligned with himself. That energy, that authenticity, is what creates lasting attraction, respect, and emotional depth. Most men never see this because society teaches the wrong lessons. They're told to impress, to earn attention, to over-deliver. But effort without alignment is invisible. It doesn't inspire desire, it signals uncertainty. She may enjoy your company, she may even compliment you, but deep down, she senses the lack of presence. And that subtle absence is enough to erode attraction over time. It's quiet, almost imperceptible, but devastatingly effective. Here's the key: women are drawn to certainty, to stability, to emotional sovereignty. That doesn't mean emotionless or rigid. It means a man who can feel fully without being controlled by what he feels. Someone whose internal state isn't dictated by her reactions, moods, or tests. Someone whose confidence and clarity create space for her to feel safe, seen, and alive simultaneously. That's the invisible psychology of attraction 97% of men miss. Think about it. When you tolerate what undermines you, when you over-explain, when you chase approval, you're broadcasting neediness. That subtle energy shift is felt immediately. Attraction fades, respect diminishes, emotional distance grows, and you may never realize it's happening because she won't confront it directly. She'll simply feel it, withdraw slightly, and eventually disengage. That's why relationships fade even when everything seems fine. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine showing up as a man fully aligned with himself. Boundaries clear, emotions regulated, presence grounded, actions intentional but not desperate, energy magnetic, steady, and confident. That is irresistible. That is memorable. That is what women unconsciously crave. She doesn't need you to perform. She doesn't need you to try harder. She responds naturally, instinctively, because the man you are radiates value without a word. Here's the challenge most men avoid. This requires looking inward, facing your insecurities, recognizing when you tolerate what you shouldn't, seeing when you chase validation. It requires courage to stop performing and start existing fully as yourself. It's uncomfortable because it goes against every lesson most men have been taught, but it's the path to magnetic attraction and deep, lasting connection. Because here's the final unspoken truth. What women secretly want is simpler than most men realize. They want authenticity, alignment, and presence. They want a man whose energy creates a sense of certainty, safety, and excitement simultaneously. They want a man who doesn't bend or overcompensate, but who is fully himself and stands in his value. And that kind of attraction can't be faked, bought, or forced. It's earned by becoming the man she instinctively feels drawn to, without manipulation, without strategy, without neediness. So ask yourself, are you showing up as that man today? Or are you still giving away pieces of yourself, over-explaining, and tolerating what undermines your energy? The version of you that she's feeling right now determines everything: attraction, respect, and emotional investment. That is the invisible currency most men never understand. Drop your answer in the comments below. Be honest with yourself, because one truth realized can change the trajectory of every relationship you have. And if this video opened your eyes, hit the like button, subscribe for more insights into male and female psychology, and share this with a friend who needs to hear it. One conversation about presence, alignment, and attraction can change the way someone experiences love forever. Now ask yourself, are you attracting her, or are you merely tolerating her while losing yourself in the process? Your answer is the first step toward mastering the psychology of attraction and reclaiming your magnetic energy.